Do the trashy pulp novels of the world have anything to offer? Are bestsellers all they're cracked up to be? Here at Terrible Book Club, we explore whether you really can judge a book by its cover, or its ridiculous synopsis. You ever passed a book and thought, ugh, who's reading this? We probably are. Hello and welcome to episode 176 of the Terrible Book Club. I'm Chris and this is Paris.
Hello.
This time we read Beginnings, a Christian fantasy short story collection by M.H. Elrich, self-published in 2023. I found this while on an Amazon short reads dive, and I was like, hey, we haven't done Christian fantasy before. Let's see what that's about. Also, It was really short. It took 20 minutes to read, so thumbs up. It's a short story collection that took 20 minutes to read.
Yeah, it's real small. So we were interested in it for its brevity, but also because, we legitimately have not read Christian fantasy on the show yet, so we thought, why not? It's an untrodden territory. If this is your first time listening to this show, what we do here at the Terrible Book Club is we read books that we assume will be bad based on their cover, title, summary, or some combination of the three. Sometimes we read books that our patrons, listeners, or friends recommend, but sometimes, Chris just dives through Amazon and comes up for air with the newest.
Sometimes I'm just like, I need a short one. I need something real quick. And thankfully, Amazon actually has it like, it takes 30 minutes to read this. It takes about an hour to read this. So I'm jamming that like half an hour button and really going in there.
I mean, to be fair,
it's all romance. It's all jerk off material except this.
Well, it's either, so I feel like with the short reads, either jerk off material or horrible like MLM scams or like other types of scams. It's like get rich quick with like fake books or whatever.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrency, all that shit. It's either scams or jerk off material, but then Christian short story collection really just diamond in the rough here.
Popped out. It really just like made itself known to me.
So anyway, most of the time we are doing the opposite of what regular people do when they're in a bookstore or browsing the internet and looking for something to read. And usually this experiment results in a hilariously disappointing read, but once in a while we do actually end up liking or even loving the book. Today, we've really just got our usual barnyard language and obviously just a sprinkling of Christianity discussion, but nothing crazy. Today's no, none of our episodes are ever safe for work because of our barnyard language. But this one, aside
we're cussing
from that,
a whole lot over here. Very unchristian podcast in general.
This is not a Christian podcast.
How about I'll read the back of the book summary. You can do the characters and setting, and then we can trade off the short story summaries.
Okay, sounds good.
Since we had to summarize all the short stories, which honestly wasn't that much shorter than the stories.
I think we summarized them in maybe 3 to 4 sentences, and the stories themselves were 3 to 4 pages. So it's really succinct.
Okay. Here's a back of the book summary designed to pull you in. In the primal era of Tira's history, there were 5 people who tamed the wild creatures who threatened their world. One was a young woman bent on stopping a tribal war. Another was too old to shed tears. The third was a boy desperate to save his mother's life. A fourth only wanted to protect her children. And the last was a man who wanted to prove himself to the woman he loved. Their stories are the beginnings of the Tamers, the Equus, the Ixites, the Draconians, the Lycan, and the Eritam. Which is which? Probably the Draconian one's probably the one that tamed the dragon. I'm just going to wild guess it there. Anyway, well, you'll just have to read this Christian fantasy short story collection to find out.
Or I could use the knowledge I already have in my head of the origins of words and how suffixes and prefixes work But thanks, Chris. So I didn't read the back of the book summary and went into this. I was bewildered because I didn't read that, so I thought all of these stories were about Earth. Which
There's
led
definitely
to some
one story that
confusion.
is Japanese. Like, let's be clear, there is one story about a Japanese woman.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a minute, but I was confused because I thought this was just like, oh, regular Earth, but with fantasy stuff happening. Apparently it's not. So our setting here is actually Tira, or Tira, a magical Christian fantasy land, also my arch nemesis, I guess.
Paris, did you realize what that Tira is? Drop
No.
an A and it's an anagram for Earth. So it Earth, but different.
Eartha.
But not... just a little different because it's got an A in it and I jumbled up the letters.
Yeah, Tira. All right. And as for characters and stuff, we're just going to introduce you to them in our plot summaries. So for every book we read, we like to give the listeners just a little bit of a plot summary so that you all know what we're talking about when we're talking about what we liked and didn't like in the book. And so, you don't have to go back and reference this. You just, the general action, the general characters, etc. All right. Chris, I'm going to start.
All right. We'll trade off on these 5 summaries.
All right. Story 1 is The Birth. Anya, the British Isles princess, gets betrothed to save her clan because marriages always end wars or something. She gets ambushed en route to her marriage and stumbles into a unicorn giving birth in the forest, as you do. Although the unicorn mom dies, Anya is able to save the filly and names her Fadia. They escape their pursuers and get to the wedding venue where Anya fulfills her betrothed's clan's prophecy by showing up with a unicorn baby as a pet and therefore being the unicorn tamer foretold. Her future husband seems pretty okay at first impression, and the story ends abruptly.
Yeah, okay, so again, to be clear, it's not really the British Isles princess. It's really the Shratib Isles princess, I suppose.
Yeah. So, I added all this stuff because it was pretty clear to me that, this story was about probably, Irish, Scottish, British, Pictish, Welsh, some kind of British Isles person based on the context and unicorn being involved and and all right. So Chris, what was our next story?
All right, this was Her Tears, and as you put a note here, it really does sound like an early Amorphous or Nightwish album track list for these titles. Or generally, any power metal band or the whatever genre is lady up front with operatic vocals.
No, singing. But that's not what Amorphous is. But it just has this kind of sort of early 90s gothy heavy metal tinge. This is a Tiamat album. The birth, her tears through the ashes, a mother's instinct, the challenge. Those are all tracks.
Yeah, really, just this is an EP here is what this is.
All right, Chris.
Very lamely produced. The keys are very clearly from a Casio keyboard that the keyboard player could afford because their mom gave it to. Anyway, Her Tears. It's about Hana, a
clearly Japanese widower. Let's be real here. I didn't read the fucking back of the book, so let's just go with it.
Who suspects her son, who went to the store for cigarettes, a wife, will not return, which is bad because her food supply is dwindling and she's too old to farm and get her own food. Really seems like a shit son there's I gotta go out and get some strange out here, Mom. Figure out the food yourself.
Yeah, she had a supply of food, and the kid probably thought he'd come back in time, but, where was the plan B?
Finding a wife is going to take a couple months, tops. Or not top, minimally, rather.
I was say, goddamn, speed running.
Speed running marriage. Anyway, she finds a griffin and its chicks in her barn and starts to feed them and gain their trust, which makes her reminisce about meeting and courting her husband. She prays once and her son comes home with a new wife. The griffin really isn't involved in that at all.
No, I forgot. In the first story, there were 2 prayers. Maybe one. I think every story has exactly one prayer. The first one might have had 2 prayers.
There's one prayer.
All right. Through the ashes. Anyway. All right, through the ashes. a what I thought a South Pacific Islander named Felix is a pyromancer with a dying mom. He's too poor to afford a doctor, so he and his best friend Nick steal 2 eggs from the local dragon's nest to sell for enough money to pay the doctor. The pyromancer and the dragon get into a literal flame war, which bonds them and makes the pyromancer also a dragon rider, and he and the dragon become besties. He names the dragon Phoenix, returns her eggs to her, gives the doctor some of the scales she shed as payment, and the doctor cures his mom.
To be clear, I want to make it a point to say that the Felix in that story turned part dragon because of the bonding. I just want that to be out there
he
for us to
did get
consider
scales
later
and
on.
red hair. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those mechanics a little bit later. Anyway, a mother's instinct. Dun, 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 dun. 2 little kids want to adopt a wildcat. Okay, 2 little kids want to adopt a wildcat kitten they found near their hut. Their mom, Chetna, says no, so they ask Dad, who says yes. Classic kid
Classic,
move.
yeah.
Dad goes to a tribal meeting, leaving Mom and the kids home. A different adult wildcat tries to eat the kids, but the kitten and the mom fight back. They are both injured, but recover with 1 prayer and some herbs. Chetna realizes she was wrong about the kitten and names her Dinatha.
I forgot to note that story also clearly took place in India, like on the Indian continent, like
Yes.
In India. The challenge.
You mean Nidia, a dini.
Yeah. yes, Nidia. All right, the challenge. Man, this one really sucked. Like, sorry, this story was just bad. All right, you get 2 adolescents. They're hunting a wolf because the wolf has been eating their village's chickens. The boy, Balin, likes the girl, Livia. Livia gets attacked by a guy at random while they're hunting the wolf, and the wolf shows up right after that. They end up subduing the guy, and they befriend the wolf with Jerky, and he becomes their pet instantly. Balin realizes he must propose to Livia because seeing her almost get hurt made him realize how short life can be or something. Livia wants to name the wolf Fang and agrees to marry Balin because he beat her in a race.
Yeah, I mean, really, again, classic move there.
Just, sure.
Just don't race men, really.
Yeah, don't race men. None of this. All right, things that were good, Chris. What was good about this?
Well, I mean, so this also kind of maybe leans into what was bad. Perhaps, well, it's a 2-sided discussion here. For something actively billed as Christian short stories, it's not really that Christian. Like, they're not saying praise Jesus ever. It's just Deo there. It's just a God. So, like, the level of Christianity, it's not really trying to preach at you about Christianity, except, I guess, the power of prayer. But again, let's table that later for part of the broader Christian billing discussion. The good part here is that it's sort of reserved in that.
Yeah, like, look, man, the levels of Christ in this were tolerable. Like, I was able to hang. They are surprisingly bearable. The only way Christianity shows up is when people pray 1 time per story, which is, like, honestly totally fine. I don't have an issue with people having faith and praying.
Yes.
Like, that's fine. I mean, there was like one notable exception of like where there was one point where the levels of Christ became unbearable, but it was very brief. There was like just a little smack. I was like, oh God, how? But yeah, I mean, like you said, for something that was billed as a Christian short story collection, I was expecting way more like evangelical indoctrination levels of content, and we didn't get that. That was good. That is a point in this book's favor. I was like, if you didn't tell me that it was Christian, I don't know that I would have identified that.
This feels exactly like that period in the late 2000s, early 2010s when there was like a lot of bands out there saying, we're a Christian band. Perhaps this was only limited to like the metalcore and post-hardcore scene that I fucked around with a lot. But there was a lot of bands that were like, yeah, we're a Christian band. And you're like, what do you mean? There's nothing religious in your lyrics or any content.
What was
like
that label? Was it Tooth and Nail?
I think
that had
so, yes.
all the Christian like hardcore and shit. Yeah, just a wild time.
To be clear, there are definitely metal bands out there that are explicitly Christian.
Like Striper is the famous one, and then there's a bunch of other ones.
Or like Demon Hunter and shit like that. And there's even more. I've heard Christian hardcore bands that are like no Jesus Christ like that's totally a thing.
It is a thing somehow.
But like this that's what this book felt like, is when you were like, you're a Christian? Why? And I feel like a lot of those bands back then might have just been hopping on the label to be like, yeah, I would like more money from a built-in audience. Why? Sure, we go to church, so our music is Christian.
Yeah, we're going to pick up on that point later. But before we get there, let's talk about other things that were good about this. You know, for a self-published thing, the cover, the lettering on the cover, the formatting inside, all look pretty good. Like, look, we've seen a lot of self-pub stuff on this show, and this one looks fine. Most of them look horrible. Like, most self-published, at least the stuff that we have encountered that's been self-published, either looks abjectly terrible, or it, like, looks okay, but it's a little janky. Like, this looked like, I thought this came from maybe a legitimate Christian publisher. I was actually surprised to see that it was self-published. You know, like, we didn't have any weird typos. Like, the reading of it was easy. It was not horribly written. I mean, it's definitely, like, written for kids, but yeah, so I feel like just the kind of the skeleton, the shell of this book was actually pretty okay, and I was kind of impressed, to be honest with you, when I read that it was self-published.
Yeah, I mean, the cover, I mean, it's not like they're doing anything crazy unique on the cover. It's like a lady in a sort of light, shifty dress kind of thing. She's got magic on her hand, and there's perhaps like a mountain with like a city on it or something. But very
the lettering on it like looks okay, and there's like a little graphic on the letter that actually looks designed.
The lady and the city look like they belong in the same space instead of looking like it was clip arted together, piecemeal. So some work was done here. Or I don't know, maybe there's some like Christian fantasy cover art repository. I feel like there's always like some kind of thing like that. Like the Christians always have their own version of things. Like,
they always
to go.
Like instead of unsplash, it's like don't splash
Christ
the
splash.
holy water or something. I don't know. Anyway, so like just in terms of just its structure and the form it took was good. All right, so I already said, oops, I didn't read the back of the book thing, so I missed that this was supposed to be like fictional races in the fictional land of Terra or whatever. I actually thought it was good that we got like cultural variety here. You know, we got people from the British Isles, we got like people in Japan, people who live on an island with a volcano, presumably like South Pacific Islander. We got people from India. I don't know what the fuck the last one was supposed to be, but like the first four did seem to go to different places on the Earth. I mean, I guess on Terra, which is stupid,
please.
But you know, so yeah, which I don't love, but I did appreciate that there was some diversity in the stories, and it wasn't all like a lot of fantasy stuff is very like white Western focused, and so it was just nice to be like, hey, we got people who aren't that. Yay. Like I was like, cool.
I just had the realization, thank you to the author for not going with the very obvious anagram for Earth that I feel like a Christian book would go for, heart. Like, that's real easy to do, and I feel like perhaps that was considered when they put Earth into the anagram generator. So props to the author for looking at that, going, that's too on the nose. Yeah. I'll add an A in there and mix it up a little bit more. So I point for you.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, whatever. The fantasy names are dumb, no matter what you do.
Yeah,
and
I always bitch about them.
Yeah, I mean, so I also like that every story is about developing a connection with an animal. Again, I totally missed I did not read the back of the book, like the summary thing, so I did not understand that this was like intentional to like be sort of a historical record for this fantasy world as to like how each of these types of people developed. I missed that part, but I was like, oh, all the stories have like a connection with a non-human animal. That's cool. I like that for kids. I mean, there is one horribly glaring major problem with that, but we will address that in the things that were bad section.
Honestly, we might as well segue into things that were bad with this, because my counterpoint to this is I feel like the title here is a little bit weird. Beginnings?
Wait, no,
like,
it's not weird at all. It's about
the beginning.
It's about the beginning of each of these groups of people, like the unicorn, the horse tamer people, the equus. Like the lady we read about, Anya, is like, she was like
they're
the
all
progenitor.
supposed to be the first ones?
Yeah, these are stories about all the first ones of each type of person who had that connection with an animal. So again, I didn't know that unless I read the back of the book. So, yeah.
I see. Tim, so that means her Tears story is like the Griffin is just there. It's not like the Griffin has anything to do with bringing the sun back.
No, that's the praying to God part. The animals are unrelated. I don't know. Like, it's like, so this is the other weird thing is I don't get, like, there doesn't seem to be a relationship between like praying to God and then also having like an animal mind meld. Like, God
doesn't come in and be like, I bestow upon thee the griffin brains for you to talk to and to control the griffin.
Maybe eventually that happens. I don't know.
What if God in this book, he sees that happening, he's like having a snack and he turns and looks down at the earth and he's like, what did they do? Yeah, I gave everyone I've granted you the power.
I gotta take credit for this quick shit. Oh man, you can't even have some fucking Cheez-Its when you're God. You know, you can't just turn away for 1 second or the earth is going to be doing some heinous weird stuff. Oh man, now this guy's like half dragon.
The wolf, he's going to eat the kid. Oh my god. Okay. Oh my me.
All right. So things that were bad about this book. Like, I know, all right, it's pretty clear based on the writing style that this is definitely supposed to be for kids. But the stories are so short and like perfunctory that you just get no character depth, that you don't develop a reason to care about anything.
We explicitly picked this out because of its brevity, I feel like. But like I didn't realize it was only a 20-minute read. Like I know I said like by timing there, I expected it to be like a half an hour or so and have like 2 stories, like, or 3 stories in it, not like 5 like extra short ones.
Yeah, I think a better choice would have been to absolutely cut that last story. That last story was terrible. It was not good. The other 4 had kernels of like you could see the author was like approaching emotional depth and then like ran away from it to end the story. Like before, like, you know,
ran out of ideas.
I thought like the wife, Hannah in the second story in her Tears, thinking back to how bonding with her husband was actually kind of difficult because of how scarred he was from war and stuff like that. I was like, that's like some good introspection. And like Anya's story, you've got, you know, a strong female character saving herself, like, and also saving this other creature on the way. And like, you know, honestly, going into a shit situation, like going to marry this guy she's never met, but she's like trying to be reasonable about it. She's like, well, we have to end this war. Like, this is what I have to do, even though it kind of sucks. And I just feel like, you know, and at the end, she's like, oh, he actually seems kind of okay. And like, so there's like beginnings of like thoughts about emotional depth and greater character development. I just wish we got a little more of that. And like you said, and I suggested as well, I think we could have got there if we just cut some of the stories here. Like, I think the challenge was very bad. I think that absolutely could have been cut. It was not, it does not add anything.
That's literally, we got into a race. She was threatened for a second. Then a wolf saved her. And then we befriended the wolf because we gave it a nice piece of jerky.
And then
married me the end.
Yeah. It was very bad. I also feel like, I don't know, the mother's instinct was fine, but like if I had to choose 3 of them, I would choose the first 3. Because I felt like those all had a little more going on that you could have expanded upon and gave a little more. And you know, and even though these stories are for kids, again, like, don't shortchange kids. Don't underestimate what they are capable of reading, of enjoying, of understanding. I feel like that happens a lot with lit for kids, is that it's just so surface level, and it's like kids understand a lot more than I think people give them credit for. You know,
or at least give them the opportunity.
Yeah,
to try and like see that.
Right, like so cut out the 2 stories that weren't as good. Keep those 3 that were more interesting, and like just invest more time into those 3 to develop a little bit more connection with the characters and a little bit more sort of like internal dialogue and emotional depth and difficulty.
I mean, this kind of to me did feel like a beer flight of Christian fantasies, but they're all kind of like the same sort of IPA, but two of them are a little bit worse than you would expect.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, like two of them are like drinking distilled weed, and you're like, oh, this is not pleasant. Oh, yeah, and all right, so the prayer stuff, right? Like, I was like, this is surprised. This doesn't feel very Christian to me. The only Christian thing was like, they pray to a god called Deo, which again doesn't have to be like the Christian idea of God. So there's exactly like one prayer per story. I think maybe two in the first one, but like it's answered by God in under 60 seconds, which is like really funny.
Quick on this one. So he's actually not eating Cheez-Its up there. He's like really on point every single time.
Well, that's because when he did eat the Cheez-Its, they were fucking merging with dragons. And he was like, I can't. I got it. Someone's got to feed me. Chop. I need an angel to feed me Cheez-Its so I can keep an eye on those damn humans down there. Monica, let's go.
Just
chop,
answer the
chop
prayers.
with
Maybe they won't get involved with the animals and stuff. Okay. All right. I'm just going to keep paying attention. This is really my favorite part of this whole book because, okay, if you're saying, oh, it's explicitly Christian, and really the only Christian-y thing that's happening here is that a prayer happens, are you trying to say that all prayer is Christian only?
Yeah, man.
Or,
a lot of
or is it the part where the God is real and answers prayers? Which even then, it's not like God appears in the stories to answer the prayers. It's just like the nice thing happens after they pray for it for a minute there.
Dude, it's like
so
Jiffy prayer up here. Like people are pulling in.
It could have all been like coincidental stuff, right? Like the son was coming home anyway from his like wife speed running or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but like it just feels weirdly claiming of prayer and religiousness and faith in general as a Christian thing.
Yeah, like I mean these people could be of any particular faith. I don't see what's, like you said, what's explicitly Christian about it. I guess maybe like how fucking transactional this is. which is how I feel like a lot of like kind of shitty Christians can be. It is weird to me because I don't know any Christian, like I know a lot of people who are Christian, obviously just by virtue of like living in the United States. But I don't really know a lot of Christians who are like, oh yeah, I prayed about a thing and it came true hours later. Like I think people can sometimes bend over backwards to make themselves feel as though a prayer did something, but it's sort of the speed at which, yeah, like the Jiffy prayer speed here we're getting is comical to me and takes away any of the like gravity of having faith and praying. I just thought it was really weird. It's like, I don't understand. Like, so you teach kids that like, oh, they're going to pray and God's going to be right there with a solution immediately. Like, that's not a great thing to put in a book because guess what? That's not what happens. Even if you do have faith and are Christian, I don't think most people expect that their prayers would be answered immediately and also exactly in the way that they request. Because
yeah, literally in 60 seconds or less, or your next trip to heaven is free. I don't know what the deal is there.
Yeah, right. Or
I can't go to hell. One time I asked for a parking spot and you didn't give me a parking spot. Therefore, you kind of owe me heaven?
Yeah, you kind of owe me, God. But yeah, the transactional nature of it makes it weird for me. I don't, because I'm like, you don't really want to be out there purporting that your religion is like guaranteed 60-second or less prayer solutions when that's very clearly not happening. I just a strange thing to do. I think it would have made more sense if the characters, you know, drew on their faith to kind of give them resolve to finish a mission or to get through something difficult, because like that's more of the sense I get from, you know, people pray, you know, praying can help people stay centered, you know, stay focused and maybe not drift into negative thinking. And that's fine. But this whole like, no, God's really going to fulfill your fucking prayer sticky note, you know, in a minute flat. I mean,
on top of that, the kind of the centerpiece of Christianity is the fact that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came down and sacrificed himself for you So you should try to live to be more Christ-like. So if you don't have a figure in your fantasy religion that is like the savior that came down to sacrifice themselves, isn't that just Judaism at that point? Right? Like, it's just, you just got the God there. You don't have the Jesus son savior figure happening there, which would have been sort of that's one of, again, the central tenets of Christianity. That's why the cross is up on every figure there. It's to remind you of how much Jesus suffered and his resolve to, like, to die for your sins. That's never brought up here. That there's never the figure to, like, for them to think about, oh, well, Sejuj sacrificed himself for me before, so I should have the same resolve.
Yeah. I can guess that perhaps in the main bodies of work in this fantasy series, that figure does exist. This is really just a short story collection to introduce you to the beginnings of some animal, like magical animal connected people. So I can imagine that maybe that is in the actual works. I wouldn't count that out. You're right, though, that is something to consider if this is supposed to be kind of a one-to-one Christianity, but rainbow or something. Christianity, but with sparkles. So yeah, that's a good point. But again, I think this is more of an appendix work. It's not really like the main body of the mythos, so unknown. The one, remember earlier I was like, the Christianity in this is pretty tolerable. The one thing I actually found intolerable was in the fourth story, a mother's instinct with the cat, with the wild cats, that I thought took place in India. There's a moment where the mom, like the kids ask the mom, like, oh, can we keep the wildcat kitten? And she's like, no. And they're like, please. And she's like, well, we're going to let your dad decide because dad makes the decisions in the household. And I was like, burn the hut to the ground and run away with the cat. So there's just a little kiss of patriarchy in there, which has unfortunately, wrapped itself up in Christian thought. So that was the one thing that I was like, get that out of there, get that one line out of there, and I would have been fine.
Speaking of irresponsible parenting.
Yeah, there's a whole so earlier again I was like, oh, I liked that all the stories were about sort of like developing a connection with animals. But there was one glaring problem there. And the glaring problem is that, like, look, man, you can't walk up to a wolf, give it a piece of jerky, and then the wolf is your friend and lets you give it belly rubs. Like, that literally happens.
Instant domestication.
Instant.
It's just like, whether.
Yeah, I mean, and it's that way in every story. The first story, I guess the first and fourth stories are a little more believable because the first story, Anya rescues the baby unicorn like as it's being born, and so it doesn't even get to know its mom. So
are unicorns born from unicorn butts?
Yeah, they're born.
Apparently,
unicorns are born from the ass. That's what this book taught us.
There's one line about reaching into the rear of the unicorn. I understand that's also probably where the birth canal is, to the back of the horse, of the unicorn, right. I should say.
Yeah.
It just really feels like you're reaching directly into the butthole.
Yeah, you're right. I also had a note about, like, oh, we're giving birth from our asses now. Like, maybe just say, you don't even have to mention where you're reaching. People know where you're reaching to birth an animal.
Can I say this book starts right away with the unicorn birth scene? So I was like, oh, we're going hard on this one right now. Like just describing like the leaving of the birth canal and stuff like that.
Yeah, sorry, all I was saying is like it's believable, it's more believable in that case because you're literally dealing with a creature who was born into this world moments ago and whose real mother is dead. So yeah, of course it's going to trust you because it has no other concept of what to do. And
also Anya got the unicorn milk. There's a line about milking the dead unicorn.
She did milk a dead unicorn,
that's some black metal
shit.
Dude,
that's
right
hard
there,
as fuck. Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I was into that first story because I was like, damn, this bitch hard. Like she milked a dead unicorn to provide for the filly. She also helped the filly like be birthed because the unicorn
Filly birth.
baby birth and filly birth. It was having trouble pushing, and Anya fucking got in there and was like, I'm gonna do it for you, and like pulled the baby out, and she milked the dead unicorn, and then she fucking buries that whole ass unicorn by herself. She's like, she was
the
like
hilt of a dagger.
yeah, and I was like, yo, that lady was there for like 14 hours digging out this giant
Like running
grave.
from bandits, and she's like, I just gotta like take care of this
Man,
first.
horses are big. All right, so those of you who haven't like ridden a horse or been near a horse, they're fucking large animals. They are not, it's not like burying a dog. Burying a horse is an undertaking. That part was
a slightly
funny.
bigger horse, because the horn, you got to get that in the grave too, right? Like that's a little bit.
True. You gotta make a little clearance for the horn.
You don't want to cover the whole horse and the horn is sticking up out of the dirt, because
Yeah.
people will be like, that's where the unicorn is. I'm just going to steal the horn.
You're right. That's true. But yeah, I was like, damn, this lady's hard. I love it. No, but really, like, honestly, those were good elements to the story. Like, we're joking
Yes.
and laughing, but we're serious about that. Back to the bad thing I was talking about. Depicting wild animals as being able to be tamed with a snack from a human one time is a terrible message to send to children, and all of these stories have this element in them, so it is not great. Like, I know it seems innocent, but this sort of idea is actually pretty dangerous, because it leads people to believe that they can tame any animal by being nice to it, giving it food, and that is not how that works, because wild animals are wild, which means they are unpredictable, and they are not your friend, and they cannot be your pet in the vast majority of cases, no matter how many slices of pizza or pieces of jerky or whatever you give it. Like, if you just encounter an animal out there, this is why people fucking die at national parks, because they're like, I'm gonna be friends with this bison calf, or like, I'm gonna be friends with this moose, and then they die. They die horribly.
They are die very quickly, because
Or they
here's
cause the
thing,
death
like,
of the animal, because if it's a young animal, it'll get rejected by
even
its
if the
adults.
animal keeps coming back for the food, because it's this is a food source for me.
Right.
One time, you're not going to have the food.
Right.
And it'll be a little upset about that, perhaps. And then, hey, you look equally as good to eat to some of these wild animals. Maybe not, I don't think the moose are out there actually, like, devouring people. So the moose will just, like, I don't know, trample you or something,
Yeah, the
because,
moose
once
will
again,
just-
wild animal.
Yeah, correct.
But, like, so the wolf taming with one piece of jerky and then, like, instant domestication, the next generation has floppy ears and all that shit. And then the wildcat one especially is just straight up Tiger King shit, right? It's like, oh yeah, well, the other wildcat attacked us, but I guess if we tame this one from birth, it'll always be nice to us. No, instinct is a real thing, right? So they're not necessarily going to be completely bonded to you and guaranteed safe all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like, I know this sounds innocent or silly, or like, oh, why would somebody read a fantasy book about taming animals and think they could? Well, if all of your stories are about how easy it is to tame wild animals and they're for children, then that idea can get lodged in their brain. And I just think it's a little irresponsible. It would make, I mean, and I know this is building up to like, oh, these people are special, they have a special connection or something, I guess, but I just need a little more there.
Yeah, I need a little more effort expended to do the first taming besides one piece of jerky.
Yeah.
Like, over time, perhaps the bond is built. Okay, so where does the dragon one fall on this spectrum for you, Paris? Because
Dragon was pretty
the story
wild, actually, because it's way crazier than the other ones.
So the story is that the pyromancer takes the eggs from the dragon with the help of his friend.
Right.
And then when the dragon is pissed and comes down to breathe fire upon him, he casts a fire spell at the same time, and they, like, touch fire tips or whatever.
Yeah, they get into a flame war. They are firing. They
They do fire docking.
They do.
And then, like, that
right.
is what turns him into part drag. I don't know, man. The mechanics on that seem real weird to me.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I mean...
And he's the first one to do this. It's an island of pyromancers, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they all have varying levels of ability.
With the dragons.
Yeah.
So no one's thought to do this defense against the dragon before?
Well, I think that most people... I think in this case, most people are rightfully terrified of the dragons and don't want to get close to them. It just seems like suicide. So maybe he is the first person to, touch fire tips with the dragon or whatever.
I just don't understand how, like, doing the fire makeout is how you get to become it. Like,
yeah. So we didn't. I forgot to put this in the summary, but yeah. Felix. Sorry, his name is Felix. When Felix does the like flame meld, like the flame fight fire with fire thing, and then they eventually just get really exhausted and stop, he realizes he feels like he's being consumed by fire, but he keeps going, and then when he's done, he has dragon scales and his hair is red, and he realizes that if he just thinks about it, he can like hide the scales and make them look like skin. And so his physical form is totally changed because he goes back to the village and like his family and friends like don't even recognize him. So that one was a little strange because, yeah, I don't understand the mechanic there of, like, why would the dragon fire turn you into a red-haired, dragon-scaled man? And why does any of that mean you could also ride the dragon? Like, there's too many things happening here based on one experience.
Is the dragon seeing the person with scales now and thinks that's their young as well now? Like, oh my god, I almost burned you alive. Why didn't you have your scales before?
Yeah, maybe?
It's like, oh, you have fire too? I didn't realize that. Go ahead, go for a ride up top. We're the same, bro.
Yeah, it like you said, I just need a little more effort there to explain that part.
Give me something.
Yeah, it just seemed a little... Like, what I would accept is if they were in their little fire war and then they both were so exhausted and like kind of stopped and they look at each other and the dragon recognizes like, oh, game recognizes game. All right, this like human's got fire too. It's as strong as mine. That's pretty cool. And the guy's like, oh man, I guess this dragon can hold its own. Like, and it is pretty dangerous. And they just like kind of regard each other. And then like maybe later on, maybe like you said, over time, they have more and more meetings and like develop something. Him turning into part dragon, I don't know how to work that part in. That seems maybe falls in love with the dragon. He's like, I gotta be like this dragon, and then he goes to the doctor and he's like, man, you gotta make me more dragony. I gotta get with my dragon love. And he's like, dude, there's an old spell, but I don't know. And then he does it and it works, and they get married. I don't know. They get married in a volcano.
Yeah, honestly, that was a much better idea where, like, okay, to save my mother, I have to undergo this transformation to get close to the dragon.
Oh, yeah, there you go. But I just feel like I said, there's too many things happening based on one, like, there's one moment, and then somehow it means he gets to ride the dragon, be cool with the dragon, kind of become a dragon. It's kind of a lot.
And also save his mom.
Yeah, the Griffin story was like particularly a non-element in the story. The only thing it did, it just like spurred Hannah to think about her relationship with her husband, but she was already thinking about it because her son had left to find a wife, and like she was thinking about how, last time my husband left, he never came back. So I don't get it. Like, there's nothing. The
Griffin's just there.
There's nothing.
In the side, like, I would like some more grain, please. It's like in the corner of the story, kind of begging for grain sometimes.
Yeah, because it has babies, and it's like, grain, please. And Hannah's like, well, this is going to kill me faster, but sure, here's some grain.
Is the Griffin injured?
No.
Do you remember if it'll go get food?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it's just in the barn all the time.
So there's not really a bond between Hannah and the Griffin either, besides she gave it food.
Yeah.
Which I guess is the point most of the time here, right? Where like give the animal food and you can begin a bond that lasts generations.
Yeah, and gives you special powers. Yeah, I don't think so.
To be fair, if you give me food, you probably will create a bond that will last
but you're a
decades.
human. You're a human adult. You're not a fucking wild, non-domesticated animal.
True.
And then the wildcat one, like I said, that one did make somewhat more sense because the children find an injured wildcat kitten, like very young. So yeah, I'm sure that for a little while that would work out. Like you said, until the kitten gets older, then not so much. And the wolf story. God, the wolf one was so bad, both for the wolf parts and the human parts. That story was, God, why was it included? Just cut that story, please. Come up with some other way for the wolf
two
people.
Young people kind of flirting for a little bit and deciding like, oh, I guess we'll stop flirting because our lives were in danger this one time.
Yeah.
I don't understand what was holding them back before then, I guess, is the problem.
I think just because they have never come up against like mortal danger. And, you know, having a brush with death often helps people recenter and reconsider. That part made sense, but like...
Sure, I suppose. I just always hate that device as like a romance spur.
Yeah.
I know it's totally possible.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not real or anything like that. It's just I don't like that as the device for romantic inflammation. That's a very medical term there.
Yes. Yeah, I also don't love it, but it is fine. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess if we're done talking about all the animal stuff, do we want to go to our final point here?
Sure.
Yeah, so our final discussion point is like, look, Christian fantasy has been done so many times. I'm not sure we need another version. Like, what is gained by doing this again when Tolkien did it and the fucking Chronicles of Narnia guy did it? Like, I mean, it is a moneymaker, as we were talking about before, like Christian media is a huge market, and maybe that's just my answer. Maybe that's the reason. Easy sales. Like, I'm not knocking it since the author seems like legitimately Christian and is a teacher, so she probably needs all the extra revenue streams she can get to survive. So, like...
Yeah, we're not going to knock that part whatsoever, but it's just, I don't know... It seems like this could have been more fleshed out. This is another thing that seems like a bunch of summaries.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that earlier about how we just needed, you know, cut the lesser stories and beef up the volume in the better stories that you had, you know?
You don't have to put out everything. You can write things and then also shelf them when they don't have as much meat on the bone, let's say.
Yeah, or like, you know, I understand that her purpose in this was trying to give us the beginnings of all 5 clans, but like, you could have done just the beginnings of 2 or 3 and then published the other 2 later,
honestly,
right? Like,
you missed out on a real publishing opportunity. Just have those be 5 separate books.
Right.
If you're in it for the cash, you really kind of blew your wad here really early.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand tradition of self-publishing, yeah, each one could have been separate, or like I said, you could have had the start of them in this book and then like finish them in another one or whatever. But you didn't have to put all 5 and have them be kind of short and only half there. Yeah, so I guess, can we fix it? Yeah, we talked about this. Make the religion stuff less transactional, get rid of the little kiss of patriarchy, rework that last story or just cut it, and make your human and animal relationships more responsible. And honestly, this would be totally fine for little kids. Like, if we're like, hey, I need a bunch of little fantasy stories for my kids who go to bed at night, like, fine. Totally fine. If you made those changes, totally fine.
I don't really have much more to add there, Paris. That's basically the same thing. I would say, for the first time ever, somehow, I'm going to say, I don't know, make it a little bit more Christian if you're going to, like, bill it as a Christian thing.
Don't make it more Christian. It's got a little touch of Christianity. Leave it at that. Don't make it more Christian.
But, like, in the way that Tolkien and C.S. Lewis did it, right? Like, they didn't say it was Jesus Christ or whatever, but they just used a lot of the trappings of things there, which you could do in here. And again, perhaps it's filled out in the broader Tira series or whatever you want to call it, whatever it's called. But it's just so upfront about it being Christian, and then it's kind of not, except there's a prayer one time.
But I don't know. I think that's good. Like, for me, that's a point. That's points in its favor. Because I think if you were writing a fantasy story that was like in your face Christian, I don't know that kids would really want to read it. They have to think about kids that have to buy this stuff, like because their parents don't let them read anything else.
It's the marketing that I have an issue with. Like, if you're just very upfront Christian, like, so make it that.
I mean, or just make it a fantasy series and just don't say it's Christian, because like it'll be obvious once. I'm assuming once people read the kind of the primary text of this series, and not this sort of appendix extra thing. I imagine it'll be very clear. I don't know. But again, if you put Christian on it, then people are going to buy it because they don't let their kids read, anything else because they think it's going to make them
honestly a real lose-lose for us in this corner.
What do you mean?
Just like, if it's more Christian, then we'll be like, ew. But if it's less Christian, then I'm like, what's the deal with the marketing? So I guess it's just pick and choose how you promote it.
Yeah, really. I mean, I think it's fine. I disagree. I disagree with you. I think saying it's Christian and just having one prayer per story is enough. I feel like, these poor kids have to like go to fucking mass or whatever evangelical shit I don't know. They're doing a lot of Christianity in their everyday. So I think if they can read a story and just have to deal with like one prayer per story, that's saving the kids.
Mom, can we read Lord of the Rings? No, we have Lord of the Rings at church. Lord of the Rings at church.
Yeah, this is Lord of the Rings at church. No, this is more Chronicles of Narnia at church. It's more childlike. It's definitely for younger readers. This is not at Lord of the Rings level. But yeah, I don't know. I gotta say, like, I was pleasantly surprised by this. I definitely thought that it was going to be overbearing with its Christian sentiment.
Same.
And it was actually fine. Like I said, I got some quibbles, but those could be easily fixed, in a second edition or something. Yeah, I don't know. Wasn't as terrible as I thought. And, pay teachers more. I'm just going to end with that.
That's the main
thing. This author is a teacher. She's probably writing this to fucking make rent. Like, pay teachers more. Pay teachers more. I'm going to keep saying it. God damn it. Pay them. Pay them.
All right, speaking of paying people for work.
Yes.
Let's thank our patrons for paying us to do this.
Yeah, thanks, patrons.
Thank you, Greg, Veronica, Will, D, Jared, Arant, Senior, Jakub, Lycoris, Elliot, Kieran, Martin, Jay, Luchek, Miri, Yanka, David, Julius, Anya, Patricia, Austin, Donnie, Beast with the Least, Scott H, Robin, Laxtodes of the Void, the ass-birthed taco-eating unicorn. Last Man on Earth 01, Funny Robot with Antennas, Hobby Boy 93, Harry, Mason, Renee, Emmy, The Ugly One, Bleached Black Cat, Julius the Nice Dragon, who you can touch fire tips with, I guess, Eastern Swiss, Rudy Bo Booty, and our Ko-fi donor Kiwi Thing.
That might have been the best secret joke you've ever pulled on me. We actually just got another patron before we recorded this.
Oh.
Do you want to add in Ben Durgan guitar?
Hey, it's Ben. I know Ben.
Yeah, I know.
Hi, Ben.
I know Ben, too.
Thanks for listening.
Ben is great. I love Ben. Ben Durgan does do the guitar good. That's what I know.
He did a very funny parody of a Bruce Springsteen song that I appreciated that was about pooping your pants, which is my favorite kind of song parody.
Ben is hilarious. He's a great guitarist.
I do that all the time, just every day. I replace lyrics about shit in your pants with common song lyrics. It's very fun, and you should do it all the time.
Yeah, I remake all songs to be about mice or mouse. That is what we do in our household. You might remember from a previous episode, I forget how long ago it was in TBC time. In my time, it was earlier today, but in your time, this episode could have come out 6 months ago. I don't know. We're recording these all fucking out of order. It's a mess. This year's a nightmare. Anyway, you may remember me talking about the Highlander TV show, and it is one of the things I put on to numb my brain into paralysis and sleep because it is just so nothing and bad. And you may also remember me talking about how much I love the theme song, which was written by Queen. And I have redone the entire theme song to be about immortal mice who squeak no wheels and eat the cheese. And so the entire song has been rewritten to be about mice. Yeah, just so you know, that's happening in my brain a lot of the time.
That's more wholesome than my thing, where I just write everything about pooping your pants.
Yeah, but it's
honestly, it's
the same
really
sentiment.
fun. Just any song, it's really, really good. I advise you.
I know this is an audio only medium, but Chris, did you notice my shirt?
No, I did not.
It's a Kaladin Brood shirt. Oh, I should show you. Actually, the back is the better way to see this. Oh, you can't see because there's a chair in the way.
Yeah, you're just backing your chair into your microphone now, Paris.
I forget how objects work.
Wow, it's the whole Malazan 14th Army. Wow, they really dug deep into their Malazan lore. It's not just a band name to them.
Yeah. So good. I love it.
We're like, Caladan Pood. See? That's that genius brain at work right there.
Sorry, I was very excited about the shirt because I have a Caladan Brood long sleeve, but I didn't have anything I could cut into a crop top, and then Tanner gave me his old one, and it has Malazan, 14th Legion, whatever on the back. It's real. It's the nerdiest metal shirt of all time. I love it. Kind of dungeon synth more than metal, but whatever. Anyway. Oh right, we're done with this podcast.
Right,
why am I still talking?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Don't poop your pants for real. Just write songs about it. It's much more fun.
All right.
All right, Paris. I guess I'm going to go pray one time that all of the books next year will be incredibly short like this one. And my prayer will be answered that all patrons will only give us 20-minute long books.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm going to leave and go pray to the food gods because I think I need another dinner. I had a small dinner, second dinner.
All right. Well, good luck with all that. See you later, Paris.
All right. Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Terrible Book Club. Terrible Book Club is an independent podcast produced by your hosts, Paris and Chris. Sound design and audio editing by Chris, with sound effects and music by Epidemic Sound and sometimes also Chris. Our theme song is Kiss by Yearn, which is, you guessed it, actually also Chris. You can find more of his soothing synthy sounds on Bandcamp at yearn.bandcamp.com. Do you want us to review a book of your choice on the show? Do you want access to some extra audio-visual weirdness? If so, become a patron at patreon.com/terriblebookclub. If you'd like to send us a one-time tip instead, you can do that at ko-fi.com/terriblebookclub. You can also support TBC for free by sharing the show on social media, following our accounts on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or Goodreads, telling your friends about your favorite episode, or by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or anywhere else on the internet. To send us book recommendations or your adorable pet photos, send an email to terriblebookclub@gmail.com.